Well, the biggest piece of crap in the history of the toy space is back, like the worst penny. And people have been asking me, based on his recent statements of relaunching his website and all the other spew of bullcrap in the statement, to make my own response to this. People have been wanting to hear from me. I would prefer to be working on the videos that I'm actually working on right now, but I've halted my production workflow midstream to talk about this because it is important and it needs to get addressed. Chris Cron at the Fans Strike Back, we thought he was gone. We thought he'd been thrown down the proverbial Death Star reactor core. And unfortunately, he's back in probably a worse movie akin to Rise of Skywalker. And I'm sure he'll tell you all that this is proceeding as he's foreseen. He was the creator. He was the con man, the thief behind the Fan Strike Back business that was supposed to make toys for people to buy. And his infamous boondoggles are his pre-orders, and I do mean pre-orders initially, for a Bantha and a 13-figure set from Star Wars A New Hope, vintage Kenner style. And he took over $100,000, probably a lot more than that between the two projects, in pre-orders. And then things started to get delayed. And the delays kept bumping out. Now, the toy space started to do the thing it always does. They love to spin up conspiracy theories. So they were talking about how he was like buying property in Europe and all this kind of stuff, which obviously wasn't true, and it was just confusing the issue. When you're on the battlefield, don't listen to people who just spin up yarns, because when you get bad intel, you end up making bad decisions, which means you don't win the battle, right? So we were ignoring all that din from the fringe crazies, and we were trying to sort out the fact from the fiction. So in the background, he started changing his fine print to calling things Kickstarters or crowdfunding rather than pre-orders, even though everybody had already, including myself, pre-ordered these items for quite a bit of money each. And suddenly we were part of a crowdfund rather than a pre-order. So things were getting really shady. And we were, people that had been there since the beginning, because he had also ridden on Stan Solo's reputation. Stan Solo used to be known as Smith Lord Creations. And he then sold that company to Fan Strike Back and was going to be a collaborative partner. Well, around the time that they were developing this Bantha and these 13 figures, it didn't come out quite fast enough that there had been an immediate conflict between the two individuals because of Chris Cron's shady behavior and his deceit. And so Chris Smith bounced. He went on to create Stan Solo Creations as a response to this. But a lot of us didn't realize that at the time, and so we bought into it. But we hoped that because Fan Strike Back had had a business prior to that selling custom boxes, which we then found out were replicator boxes, just not given credit for said products. And those had been delivered to customers. We'd hoped that everything was still going to be all right. And turned out it was not all right by a long, long, long shot. And, he started getting really pathological in the lies, and started telling everybody out there that would listen that, he wasn't to blame, that it was the factory to blame, that he was going to be making these amazing toys. And meanwhile, he was selling other action figures, Boba Fett's and random stormtroopers and random, what was the one? A Rebel Fleet Trooper, I think it was. He was selling those to new customers. And some of those, like the Fleet Trooper, were supposed to be part of the 13-figure set. And he refused flat out to send them to the customers who had already paid. I'll still never understand the logic behind that, kicking the can down the road, making really bad looking slave Leias and things like that, on top of the schedule when he should have been working toward getting the actual figures that people had pre-ordered. It was going into years. We're now going into year 5, and he still hasn't delivered anything. And then sometime, I can't remember if it was last year or late in 2022, everything starts to run together. One of his cronies, Kevin Sexton, who's also done a runner, his Bantha sculptor, he thrust a Bantha prototype into my hands at Toylanta. And I was like, this is not the way I wanted to receive this item. I told Chris Cron I wanted to receive it like I paid for it, like everybody else. And of course it was a piece of junk, and I did a whole review about that, which made him really angry. And so then he turned on me. It's Chris Cron. He's a liar. He will eat you if you're not, towing the line for him in any direction. And he'll throw you into the fire, even though you have nothing to do with his business. So it started to become this big thing, and I had to get him on a call, which I then recorded, and then, had him on the line talking about how, the Bantha wasn't what was promised, even though he was trying to like him and haw. And then I tried to get him on a customer call with his actual customers, not me. Like I recused myself from the live stream just to get customers' questions answered many years late. And he started making all these caveats about the call before he would do it, saying, we're not going to talk about the 13 figures. We're only going to talk to paying customers that we can verify about the Bantha. And it was like, dude, both projects are late. Like, this is really scummy, shady behavior. But we tried our best to get him on the record on something. And then at that point, he seemed to have some sort of domestic life implosion, no surprise, along with his business implosion. And he shuttered his website, and according to everything I've learned in his domestic life, he didn't just do a runner on us, he did a runner on a lot of people in his real life as well, which I believe involves crossing state lines. That's not even an exaggeration. In the background, I was changing all of my policies, unfortunately, because of the level to which this guy had bruised the artisan toy makerspace. He had taken so much goodwill and trust out of it across the board that I had to start telling other people who were delivering on their products, I can't talk about your products until they're ready to ship. In other words, until you have them in stock, and the moment a person puts their money down, they have a tracking number and they get those items. I can't talk about artisan toys anymore the way people talk about HasLab previews and upcoming Mattel announcements and NECA announcements and stuff like that, which is a real shame because there's some really good players in this space who are honest. But because of Chris Cron's bullshit, I couldn't talk about that stuff in the same way anymore. It wasn't safe. And that did flow in conjunction with people already starting to rattle their sabers about the Mars Industries Airwolf, which was also having a problem. So all of that was not good. And I said, I'm not going to talk about this stuff the same way anymore. We hoped that worst case scenario, he was just gone, Chris Cron, and that he wouldn't return. It'd be nice if something else would have happened with that, but we were hoping that he would just go away. Unfortunately, he's made a statement that he's going to bring his website back, and he's going to try and start selling toys to people again. And in this statement, he makes a lot of excuses and points a lot of fingers at a lot of blameless people. He blames the factories for the toys not getting made. He blames YouTubers. He blames Tony at Analog Toys. He blames, of course, me. Even though Tony and I were the ones that thought at the very beginning of this that all of this was above board, and we thought Chris Smith was attached to all of it. And so we were, talking about it ahead of time back in the day. So we really tried to help this become a success, and then we were stabbed in the back for it through statements like this. He blamed All Things 80s, and he blamed another channel, I think it's called Star Wars Obsessed or something like that. If I have that wrong, I apologize, but it's something like that. And he says that we lied about him, and that we never attempted to reach out to him to ask him any questions. Well, his customers tried many times to reach out to him with questions, and he brusquely shoved them off, blocked them, told them to go away. He had their money now, so there was nothing they could do. That was a long-standing issue with this guy. And then on top of that, as I just stated a second ago, I went out and had him on a recorded phone call. Now, I had a number of conversations with him trying to resolve this issue before I recorded this call. So that's a flat out lie. Like, I was trying to mitigate the situation in the background to find the best result and get the best result for everyone, and convince this guy. I can't tell you how many times I told this guy in direct messages and in audio chats, dude, you need to drop all this other stuff, these Slave Leias and these Boba Fetts and all this kind of stuff, and get the products to the customers. That Bantha and those 13 figures need to be your only priority. Okay. And then he wouldn't do it. And then he would go off and blame everybody else. And in this particular case now, he's saying that the 13 figures are never going to happen. More than likely because the Bantha never got delivered to anybody else either. That Bantha's never going to happen either. And he said just flat out like a sociopath, oh, and there's no refunds for that because it's all these people's fault. I mean, this guy is not only clearly mentally ill, but he is a supreme asshole. Like, this guy takes no accountability for anything. And from the things I've learned about both his legal battles in real life, you can go look on public record about his multitude of legal battles in real life, as well as some of the domestic, stuff he's got going on. This guy is a massive piece of shit, like all the way around. Just, when you're gonna sit there and tell people that even though you took hundreds of thousands of dollars and you're not going to give it back because of everybody else, like, oh, I can't give that money back because they're all the ones that stole it from you, even though I'm the one that created the items, created the business, promoted them, and I'm the one that took your money. It's all these other people's fault for reasons that I'm just concocting in my head. And the big one, of course, is they never asked me any questions. They just lied about me. I've got the call. I had it up online there for a long time. And guess what? At the end of this video, I'm going to play the whole call again. And I'm not taking it down this time. And the reason I took it down the first time wasn't because Chris Cron asked me to take it down. It was because a bunch of people in the toy space were like, I can't handle the drama. And it was like, well, it's all right, fine. Chris Cron's gone, so might as well just, mothball it for a while. But no, this time it's going to stay up. I'm going to have it, right at the end of this video. You can listen to the whole thing again. We were asking him questions. We had him on the record. We were trying to get answers. So don't front that lie. All right, so then he goes on and he says that, and this is the one that really just chapped me, all right? I'm used to people lying about me. Like, that's fine. People love to blame me for all kinds of things. And it's very common out in the toy space for the din to try and blame me for a business's failure. Like, they tried to blame me for the HasLab Rancor failing, and they also tried to blame me for all kinds of other things. They love to say I'm in collusion with companies. I'm not. I'm just very blunt, and I'm very honest, and people don't like that. And in this particular case, now Cron is on the bandwagon trying to blame me for the failing of his company, which is hilarious. If you were delivering the products, not only would you have gotten a, probably, positive, review from me as far as like, I paid for the thing, I got the thing. I might point out a few things that maybe didn't work out that well within the products, but I'm not going to say you never delivered, and that's going to do you worlds more good than going out and saying, oh, my whole thing failed because of a YouTube channel. No, it failed because you stole people's money and didn't deliver a damn thing. I'd love to know what Rommel thinks about all this, your sculptor. I'd love to know where he falls on this. I haven't seen him make a statement about your BS. That would speak volumes. Your sculptor buddy Kevin Sexton's done a runner and not made any statements about it. And I know that he was the project manager of the Bantha. So that means you were paying him something under the table, I hope. Which means you were paying him with money you stole from all of us, while selling some figures out of the 13 set to brand new customers that you wouldn't send to us. You are a piece of shit, Chris Cron. And anybody who is stupid enough to consider maybe buying from you again with this relaunched company you're about to do, they don't have two brain cells to rub together. But here's the one that blew me away the most. It wasn't him lying about, me being responsible or Tony or anything like that. Yeah, that was obnoxious, but isn't anything I haven't heard before. No, this is the one that in his statement, he says, you need to remember that fans strike back. We don't make the products. We are, you ready for this? We are a third-party payment processing service. It's the factory's fault that you didn't get the products. Now, late in the game, Chris Cron actually said that you have to contact the factory to get your refund. He said the only way you're going to get a refund is to contact the factory because it's the factory's fault. This was right before he shuttered his website and ran away for a while. Well, we knew that was crazy talk to begin with. Nobody at any company in the world that contracts with factories in other countries, nobody says, well, you're not going to get a refund from us on it because the factory is at fault for not delivering, so you need to contact that factory yourself. But now he's gone a step further, and he said, Fan Strike Back isn't even a product company. They don't sell products, according to this statement. Not one bit. They are a third-party payment processing system. So even though those factories wouldn't be making any of those products but for you wanting to get them to make them, in other words, they wouldn't have thought up to make those. They are taking you on as a client to make these items. You are now saying that Fan Strike Back doesn't make products. Well, then you're certainly coming up with a lot of product ideas for a company that doesn't make products and isn't responsible for them and their delivery. And now you're saying you're a third-party payment processing system? So you're PayPal. So you are just taking people's money, which on a thin level is the only honest thing you've said in this whole drama. But here's the thing, Chris. You are claiming to be a PayPal type service that doesn't make products at all. One, why am I going to buy products from a company that can't bother to make its own products, let alone claim, honestly, that it's the one conceiving of the products? They're your product concepts. They're your product ideas. If you can't bother to even take ownership of that, why should I bother to buy a damn thing from you? Two, and this is the big one, if you are now claiming that you are some sort of like Wish.com version of PayPal, you know what PayPal does when somebody buys through them and they don't get their product from any seller? PayPal has systems in place to get that person refunded. Your job as a third-party payment processor would be, but you don't know this because you're a pathological liar and a full-blown idiot. But hey, let's just keep going with this so that you know, so that it's on the record. Your job, if you were a third-party payment processing system, would be to protect the consumer to get the money back. A person who buys through PayPal any product, even ones that are made in factories overseas, of which most of them are, they don't have to contact the factory directly to get the product back. They contact PayPal and inform them of the situation. And PayPal turns around and works with them to get a refund. Now you've put yourself in a position semantically where you really owe everybody a refund, asshole. I know for a fact that you're not a third-party payment processor. You are an incompetent businessman. You are a liar, you are a thief, you are a con man, and you have stolen money from all these people. You are not a third-party payment processing system. You're not PayPal. You're nobody's pal. And on top of that, your expectation that you don't owe anybody money back, that's just you trying to sleep at night. And I get it. You're like messed up in the head. I get it that you don't operate on the same level. You're probably like a sociopath or something. None of that changes the truth. It only changes the truth in your, Russell Nash mind. You're scum. You're absolute scum. And anybody who's stupid enough to buy anything from you going forward, I pity them. To everybody listening right now, even if you've never heard of this situation before, the Fans Strike Back has scammed hundreds, if not thousands, of customers out of well over probably $250,000, if not more. It probably is a lot more. And they're never getting their money back. And this guy is blaming the factories in Asia and YouTube channels for that money just disappearing. Even though all of the malfeasance and all of the shady behavior, it all goes back to what was going on between Chris Cron and his cronies. His own business partners from before he bought Smith Lord Creations don't even work with him anymore. They abandoned him long time ago. You got no friends anymore, Chris. And I'll be damned if you're gonna let unassuming buyers who haven't heard of you before. I'm gonna be damned if I'm gonna let you prey on them. To everybody, the Fans Strike Back, aka Smith Lord Creations, if he's still using that name that he basically stole from Chris Smith. Because at this point, yeah, they had a contract deal, but he busted that contract so badly that he has run that guy's reputation through the mud, through the absolute mud. So yeah, he tried to rob Chris Smith of his good name. Anybody hearing me right now, if you see advertisements for toys from Fans Strike Back or Smith Lord Creations on the Fans Strike Back website or Facebook portal or whatever it is, don't give them a cent. Don't give them a single ounce of your money. Don't give them $1. Don't give them a quid. Don't give them €1. Don't give them anything. They have robbed this community. That man is a thief. Don't do this. Let that man continue to wallow in abject failure because he has left all of us without a chair when the music stopped. And I'm saying to you again, Chris Cron, I don't care what you say or do. Everybody knows your lies at this point. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let some jackwagon like you swindle all of us again.
if people aren't happy with the bantha, then they can go and get the full value of the bantha in other products on your site.
Yes. Hey, I came before and I bought a bantha, but I also bought, this, and I was happy with it, and I'd like to get more of that. Great.
Okay. What if all that stuff though is still stuff that's, out of not out of production, but it's still 2 years delayed, or there's no arrival time for it? I mean, what happens then? Because then people are just trading up one thing for another, where they don't know what the quality of the products will be when they arrive. They don't know when the products will arrive, and they're still in the same boat. They've just moved their money into a different question mark.
Well, I wasn't talking about the 13, which really, I think by your comment there, that's what you're basically wrapping that around.
Well, no, I mean, even some of the Slave Leias and Fleet Trooper sets and things, they end up being sold out, and then people, have to wait. I mean, I've gotten messages too over the last 24 hours with people going, well, yeah, I finally got my Fleet Troopers, and then other people are like, yeah, I'm still waiting on my set or this and that. I don't know what they're supposed to expect from picking out a different product, is what I'm saying. Like, is it something where it's in stock and everybody immediately gets what they want, or not?
Yes.
Like,
yeah, I mean, that's what I was going for. I mean, the Slave Leia, since it's sold out, even if we didn't offer this, someone came to our website today and they wanted it, they can't get it. It's sold out right now. Until we reorder it, it's not something that we have. But they look and they say, okay, well, you do have this, and this ready to go. Those are the things that I want. Great. We'll send them out.
What you said that the bantha money went into the 13. So
what I'm saying is for us to be able to cover refunds for absolutely everybody isn't possible. Number one, because of the tooling and production that we've already paid on the bantha, and then if we had any extra money, that went to tooling and production on the 13. So it's not possible to cover complete 100% refunds for absolutely everybody if they want one.
No, I hear what you're saying, and clearly I got that correct anyway in the video, because I was like, it's pretty clear that there's not the ability to pay full refunds for this. But my point is that you keep using the word factory, and I need to know, like, first it was a factory in Chicago.
That's what it is, man. It didn't change.
Okay. What is Kevin Sexton's what is Kevin Sexton's involvement with this factory, and that friend that's always lurking around him, who claims to be a metal caster and a resin sculptor, and at Toylanta kept referring to it as our bantha, whoever that guy is? What is their role in the manufacturing of this bantha? Were they the ones that were stamping the approval on everything? Were they the ones creating the molds? Like, what's the deal here?
Well, first, that I'm blindsided by, because I don't know who you're talking about.
There is a guy who's like Kevin's lifelong friend. Imagine in a movie where there's like that friend that you've had since you were a little kid, but the friend is like a total screw up, but you've always kind of got him around anyway because you feel emotionally obligated to, like, you've seen those types, right? And this guy is like, he told Scott and I when we were at Toylanta, he kept saying, our bantha, our bantha. And then at one point during dinner, because I'm sure Kevin told you we all went to dinner to talk about everything, this guy was referring to the fact that he was a metal caster and he also did resin molds. Now, he didn't say that in the context of the bantha, but again, that was a separate comment, and then Scott and I kind of took note of it and then went on with the conversation. And with Kevin having the banthas, whereas for some reason, I don't know why these Chicago factories aren't sending them to you to then send to us. Instead, they're sending them to Kevin. It makes it start to look a little weird.
Well, here's why. With the 13 and everything that we've done before that, excluding the Bantha, all the existing figures, all the existing weapons, everything. And actually, this even goes back to before we took over, and I was working basically as the U.S. person for Chris Smith. Everything all came through me. Now, I, contrary to popular belief, don't live in a, multi-million-dollar mansion. I actually live in a pretty small house. And since Kevin was the one who was in charge of, finding a factory and selecting a factory, he also said, I can be the one, take that burden off of your shoulders. And, instead of having the typical figures as they are with our factory sent to me, which then I have to basically process and send everything out, Kevin said, let me do that with the Bantha. And I said, okay.
But if the Bantha was going to be made to Kenner specs and Kenner quality, why on earth would, after assertions, I know there were cost overruns at some point or whatever, but why on earth did you just trust? Because here's what I'm asking. Mm-hmm. Given how the Bantha has actually come out, and you've seen the very stark footage of it in my video, would you have approved that from a factory?
Not that one that was falling over, no. And the Bantha that we did get a look at, assembled, didn't do that. And I have to assume it's because those, whatever you want to call them, wires or cords on the inside on yours must have been looser. But no, the Banthas that we got, they didn't do that.
So even though Kevin, first of all, I'm going to ride right past the fact that I think that's a terrible way to attach legs to such a heavy creature, but let's go right past that for the moment. Even though Kevin pre-received these and wanted to, you and him were hoping that we would do this live unboxing of mine as it arrived, you're telling me that Kevin looked over that one and said, this is definitely the one that we want on camera for the big reveal that we're going to say is the first one seen by the most people, even though it had all those janky problems. Did Kevin really look at that and say, yep, that's the one? That
I honestly can't honestly answer. I mean,
I know, but it means that you're detached from the process somewhere, and that means that Kevin, you've let Kevin handle this whole thing, and you've been doing other things with other figures and stuff, but this is one of the most high-profile things that you guys are getting heat for from before my video, and yet here you guys are going, yeah, we kind of just let Kevin do all that, and here's the result, and whoops. I'm not saying...
Well, it more went like, okay, Kevin, did you get the Banthas from the factory? Yes, I got them all. Okay, so did you set aside one for Michael? Yes, I got this one going here, this one going here, and this one going here. Great, and we moved on to something else. I take responsibility for that.
But that's what boggles me. Like, why weren't those finished Banthas going to you, so you could distribute them? Why was he handling distribution of them? Like,
because he offered to, like I said, to lighten my load, because I'm already doing absolutely everything else, and I'm in a pretty small house. He goes, look, he's like, I have a place here. He described, he's like, I don't know if it was a large room or a shed or what it was. He's like, I have a space where I can help warehouse and process these things. And I said, great, I don't have that. I have a small house with boxes everywhere, and I'm already overloaded based on the figures that I'm already doing.
Okay. Well, okay.
That's 100% how that went.
Okay, great. So let's stay in the Toylanta mode here for a minute in this conversation. Yeah, okay. Sure. I was at Kevin's panel. Okay. I was there. It was right after mine. Okay. And there weren't that many people in the room when his panel started. I'm not trying to compare. I'm just simply saying there were like 10, 11 people there.
Okay.
he did his presentation and then took questions at the end. The presentation was where he told the whole story about the slave Leia, how he was working with the factory to make the saddle correct, all this kind of stuff as far as the right materials and everything like that. So here's what I want to know. Like,
Okay.
how do you think I got that wrong? Because I was sitting there, man. I was there in the presentation.
That's not what I was saying that you got wrong, because after Kevin's panel ended, about I think it was about 5 minutes after that, because whenever he called me, it was still loud in the background. I could barely hear him. It was really quick, and he just said, just wanted to let you know, just wrapped up the panel. Everything went great, and not one negative comment, not anything like that. And that's what he told me, and I said, okay, cool. I said that mirrors the feedback that I've been getting. But about Slave Leia and all the other stuff, I'm not sure what he added in there and ad-libbed, because I can send you the stuff that I sent him, and they were all bullet points just on the bantha. There was nothing about anything else.
Right,
Anything
but that's my whole point. Is
must have added.
Yeah, that's my whole point. Is that he was. I'm not saying he was saying anything salacious. I'm just simply pointing out to you that he was saying things in that presentation that directly run counter to statements that you have made in posts on Fan Strike Back or Smith Lord Creations or whatever page you're on Facebook at this point. So I'm saying I'm just trying to point out that you've got a messaging alignment thing going on here, and I know for a fact, Chris, that whether you want to admit it or not, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but whether you want to admit it or not, I have been told by people who know that the Bantha thing became a water over your head kind of situation. And I don't understand, like, why you haven't. I know you say that 95% of your customers buy other stuff, but for the love of God, man, like, these are the most expensive items, the 13 and the Bantha, and to make it sound like you're deprioritizing them, that's not good. Like, to say that the people who bought the most expensive things are the ones that are going to have to wait the longest, that's not good.
No, that's what I was hoping to avoid in how that could have come off, because really what I'm saying in that, and I can go back and maybe check the wording. I may have got something wrong, but what I'm saying is that I'm not ignoring either one. That I have that both have a seat at the table. Obviously, I'm not going to ignore 95%, but on the other side, I'm obviously not going to ignore the Bantha and the 13 either.
But that's how it comes across, because we've been waiting 2 years. And so when you then change your statements from the 13 and the Bantha are our top priority to, well, I can't ignore the 95% of my other customers who are buying things that we've announced since then. You just want to look at Fan Strike Back and go, so are you guys just like kicking your feet up about these two big projects and just letting them go at a glacial pace? Because damn, like, these things need to get done. And when the Bantha finally does get done, and the first few end up in the hands of Fan Strike Back admins, Fan Strike Back sculptors, some rando YouTuber who has been slagging you for the last few months, and then suddenly he's really happy with everything, and then mine shows up and it can't even stand up, and I get it through this very under-the-table kind of way, which, I mean, do you not see where there's like, the optics problems are compounding? Like, they're just...
I absolutely see how all that stuff can, be looked at like that. But for everything that you're talking about, there's a valid explanation as to why. Being that you now know that Kevin has the banthas there because he's processing them the same way that I am with the figures. It just makes sense. And he's like, well, yeah, and Michael wanted to have me back for the unboxing anyway. I'm down here. Why not do that? Because the other route would involve shipping it, because they're already all coming from Kevin, just like the figures come to me from the factory. Would it involve shipping it to me and then shipping it back?
No, look, I get that now that I understand where the factory is shipping them to. That answers that question. But it's still a little not pro when it comes to, you don't get your receipt with it, you're not getting it, you're not having a paper trail record. And then on top of that, am I going to have to go crawling back and figuring out, did I pay for shipping that they ultimately didn't have to worry about? Like it's all those kinds of things that start falling through the cracks and making this, and then you get the item, and the item isn't, regardless, the item is not Kenner quality, and it's not Kenner factory quality, and it's not, whether you want to say it or not, Chris, it's got a homespun finish resin fill pour to it. And Kevin apparently even told somebody else who's in the comments of one of my videos saying he was at Toylanta. Kevin proudly told him that it was resin, which means it's not Kenner quality. It's not Kenner plastic, which means it's not what you guys have said it was going to be for 2 years.
Well, this is what the conversation that I was having with Kevin was, and we were like, okay, we can educate people on the differences, but basically it boils down to, this is actually an improvement on the Kenner quality, because in a larger item like this, you don't have to have the bendability. This is coming from, again, like people who are professional mold people that deal with, like, again, I've never worked in that capacity. I don't know any of that stuff. I'm just repeating what they're telling us. So it's like, okay, well, we can sit down and we can explain those differences, that that was meant to be an improvement, but it's almost better to say, okay, to come up with what we did. If you're happy with your bantha, you can have your bantha, and this. And if you're not, then blame me, call me every name in the book. But you can have this also and this also to equal what you paid. I mean, we can set out on a 3-week course to educate everybody into why the minutia of every decision was this, and the sturdiness and thickness of this plastic versus the other one. But we think this is a better option.
Well, I know that you were saying something at the beginning of the call about you want my endorsement for this, not refund, but compensation plan. And what I think would be...
Well, basically what I mean by that is to just say, hey, you know what? This is a direct result of what's gone on with the bantha. I've talked to Chris, and this is what he wants to do for everybody, and here it is.
Is this bantha resin or plastic?
It's resin.
And it came from a factory.
Yes, absolutely. The one in Chicago. Like I said, I 100% do not know who that guy is.
Okay.
I know that in Kevin's process of beginning to make his connections, that he said that he knew a couple lifelong friends. 2 of them happened to be, I think, in the business. He said he said could set him up with people that could refer him to this one. And this was not the first factory. The first factory was in New Jersey. And then he ended up selecting the one in Chicago.
This is after the original SLC factory wasn't possible anymore.
Right. This is after we went back and forth with them a long time trying to get things back in line because costs were going crazy, and I could not, in good faith, turn around and say, "Hey," I posted this at one point too. I said, I can't go back to people and say, "Hey, you paid $189 for your Bantha, but now the factory, because of whatever situations that they're telling us, is now going to be this, so you need to pay $50 more." I couldn't, in good conscience, do that. I negotiated with them for a long time. Can we do this? Can we add units? Can we subtract units? Can we pay for half now and pay for half later? What about this? What about that? There was nothing that I could do to bring those costs back in line, so we opened it up to other places.
Okay. What about?
But we were never going to make this in anybody's house.
No, I know. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I hear you. What about this whole thing with the Slave Leia timing? Because you say that it was ready to go, and that contradicts what Kevin said like 4 days ago at Toylanta when he just started talking about Slave Leia at the panel.
Well, the Slave Leia, and actually I didn't even really know this until I brought it back up to him for clarification. Evidently, there was multiple Slave Leias. I was under the impression that there was just like one or two. But evidently there were multiple, and there were remakes, so that I'm not really even sure on now.
Well, because the way you described it was, well, we didn't venture out to do the Slave Leia despite the 13 and the Bantha not being made. It was already ready to go. You said that in a statement recently, but yeah. Kevin at Toylanta said, no, I told Chris Cron that I'd sent that Slave Leia sculpt off to Chris Smith per my agreement, and you knew that because then you asked him to make another one. Which means that it wasn't actually ready to go when the Bantha and the 13 were already underway.
Well, we had that Slave Leia at the factory, and that Slave Leia was ready to go. I don't know if it was the first Slave Leia or the second or the third, but that Slave Leia was ready to go before tooling was completed on the 13. That's absolutely true.
So before tooling was completed on the 13, the Slave Leia somehow was ready to be made, even though they weren't.
Yeah, because the tooling wasn't completed because of revisions that we had to do. And this is something that I was hoping to tell people kind of after it was completed, and, there's kind of like a behind the scenes or like a recap, and, everybody has their stuff. Everybody's happy now. We're beyond that. We're a couple years later. What were some of the things that you faced at the time? And, let me tell you about the story about how our molds got lost in the mail to China, and we had already sent over half of them, and these were ones that took a little bit longer. These were pieces just of certain arms and legs and stuff like that we needed to complete.
Yeah. Kevin told me all that at dinner. He told me about the molds getting lost and some of the molds getting wrecked when they tried to do the first hot pours and all that kind of stuff. And then you and Rommel had to rebuild them.
Yes, those are undercut issues that we faced after we then did have to replace them. But because they got lost at the time when COVID was breaking out and all packages were delayed, we had to wait to even verify that they were lost, because I'm talking to Rommel and we're like, what do we do here? If these things are lost, we're going to have to completely remake them. Okay, but do we wait another couple days to see if they show up? Because if we start this whole process again, it's going to add months. And we're like, okay, well, let's give it another week. They didn't show, and then eventually we had to pull the trigger and say, you know what, we can't wait any longer. It might not be COVID. They might just be lost, and let's remake everything. So yeah, that actually happened. Then we faced undercut issues on those replacement parts that we had to build again from scratch. So yeah, all that stuff happened. I never wanted to go public with any of that because people said, oh, well, you're just making excuses.
I know. Look, man, I know you didn't want to go public with it, and neither did Kevin. When Kevin told me that at the restaurant the other night, he said, I'm telling you this in confidence. And I said, okay. And guess what I didn't say in my video?
I know.
Look, man,
Michael,
I am not here. I am not here to screw anybody over and break confidences about things. Notice I didn't mention anything about the Chicago factory in the video because you had told me that in confidence several months ago on the phone. What I'm trying to do is be honest in what I observe and guide this conversation in a specific way that maintains integrity. And that includes you guys being able to pick up on the fact that I'm not breaking confidence with you.
I would never accuse you of that.
Well, by extension then, I think you and I can both agree that I'm not a liar, and I did not lie about what I heard at Toylanta.
Right, and in my thing I said I'm not calling Michael a liar. I said based on what Kevin told me at, basically 5 minutes later at Toylanta, this is the feedback that we got.
Yeah, and I never said anything about how the presentation was received. I didn't say the presentation was a disaster. I didn't say anything like that. I didn't qualify it. I simply said during this presentation, he told the story about the slave Leia. He told the story about, the Bantha, and he made statements about how the Bantha was something where his work, he didn't want to see it get lost, and so he stepped in. As he said at the presentation, you got to step up to the bat and take a swing. He almost became a motivational speaker at one point, and Scott looked over at me and said, "This is getting heavy," or Andy. Look, so my point is that he brought that up, and so that you walk away from that with the inference of, not even an inference, an overture of, wow, if Kevin hadn't stepped in and started doing something about the Bantha, it would still be in limbo right now. That's how he told the story to everyone, not in confidence, but at the presentation in front of all 10 or 11 people.
Okay, well, I'm not questioning 1% of that. I know Kevin's a very proud guy, and Kevin likes to ad-lib, and Kevin likes to have credit for stuff, and I have no problem with that. I'm more of a stand back, and he's the sculptor, let him take credit. But that's not something that I wrote in the presentation. That's obviously something that he ad-libbed, and if he wants to pat himself on the back, I'm completely fine with that. But that was not in any way written by me, endorsed by me, or I had any knowledge of.
I'm sure it wasn't. But at the same time, it doesn't mean it didn't get said.
I know, dude, and that's and I was not inferring that I was trying to call you a liar about that, because I couldn't, because I didn't even know until you told me right now.
Well, but you did say that I was misrepresenting everything, and now that you've heard what I've just said, I wasn't misrepresenting my own experience at that presentation.
No, I thought your misrepresentation was whenever you said this is not made in a factory, and it 100% is.
But like I said, if it's made at a factory and you're advertising it as going to be, the way Kenner would have done it, and yet it's coming out looking completely different with janky legs and metal pins in the saddle and everything else, this ain't Kenner, man.
And that's why I'm willing to fall on the sword and let people call me every name in the book. But at the end of the day, I'm still going to do that and compensate them. Like I said, even over the fact that I'm basically willing to say, okay, so you paid $200 for a Bantha. I'm going to devalue that and say that you only should have paid $150 and give you a $50 credit back. And when I say you, I don't mean you specifically.
I know what you mean. I picked up what you're putting down.
I hope that, from the first time that we talked, that you realized that I was a stand-up guy, and I'm trying to be that in this. Everything aside, I'm not out to scam people. I'm not out to screw anybody over, and I've never told one person that I'm going to take their money and not deliver them product.
I never said in the video you were a scammer.
No.
I know. I'm just reminding you that I didn't say that.
No. I know. I'm not. Again, this is. I probably should clarify. I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm just saying what other people have passed along. So I'm just saying that in this light, I I want to be obviously known as not that person, not inferring that you did.
No, I know, but I'm just making sure that we all, because
yes.
like I said,
I know.
Yeah.
Dude, I watch your videos very closely. I pay 100% attention, and
I just don't say things. I don't say things off the cuff. When I use words, I mean those words very specifically. And a lot of people get emotional, and then they go out there and they're like, "Well, what you really meant was this," and I'm like, "No, I'm not like you, asshole. I don't do that kind of stuff." And so I didn't want you to think that I'm sitting out there not saying words I mean. I try to be very precise.
Oh no, you aren't, man. And I'll tell you what, when you lean into that camera and you look at me like that, especially when you're speaking to like, dude, it's like you're sitting right next to me. I completely get you.
Okay, well, okay, so how do you envision this? I know you said endorsement's not the right word, but what do you see happening or would like to see happen in the next few weeks, days, whatever, for this plan?
Basically, whatever you're the most comfortable with, wrapped around a kind of a thing where, hey, look, the video that I did and the follow-up both had an impact. Chris Cron wants to make this right just as much as Michael French does in the intent of making this video, because I don't believe that you made those videos for any other reason other than to make things right.
I always make videos with the collector in mind. It's never with,
right.
That's the whole thing. Like,
exactly.
Like, I did go out there a few months ago and step in and say, you cannot call Chris Cron a scam artist. You cannot call Chris Cron a real estate swindler. You can't call him these things.
Dude, it's a pretty long list now.
I know it is. It's a long list for me. I'm a white supremacist. I'm a child molester. I'm all kinds of things. And so I sympathize with that, and I don't like people doing that shit. So that's why I went out there and said, hey, you can't call him this stuff. And I said it again at the top of the video yesterday.
Well, this is the stuff that I don't I hesitate to bring up, because I'm not asking you to do this because I know you already have. But what I'm hoping is that in some sort of a resolution between me and you and a statement like this, it keeps stuff like this from happening. Because last night, I got my first threatening phone call. And that was on the heels of, there's a couple, well, there's more than a couple, but there's quite a few pretty far out there forums. And these forums have, again, released my home address, which they did before, so that I wasn't kind of shocked by. But the new step up now is that they're now asking for information on my family, and I have to draw the line at that.
Well, yeah, nobody with a brain is endorsing that kind of behavior. I mean, that goes.
Right, and I'm not saying you are.
No, that goes. I told people it was wrong to even cast aspersions, let alone no. I mean, I've had that happen to me too. I've had my address and everything is on 4chan and Discord and all kinds of stuff from people who have hateful hopes that I'll get swatted or something like that. And
right.
Yeah.
And your average person would look at that, oh, well, and if you're uncomfortable, call the police. Well, it's like, okay, am I supposed to go half a mile down the road to my local police station and say some guy on the internet that's not using his real name, that goes by Mickey Mouse, is making threats? I mean, what's that going to do?
Exactly. Here's the thing. I'm always making videos for the toy collector, and I've gotten beaten up for my honesty before, as you know, with G.I. Joe Classifieds and everything else. But my point is that if it had been Stan Solo making a crappy product, if it had been Pro Customs, if it had been Bobby Valla, I'd have said that the product was crappy. So I'm let me think about this and figure out what I think the best method is, and then I'll send you a message or call you back and everything. I need to mull this for a little while, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, All that stuff is completely valid and understandable, and I think in this light, it would be that hey, look, the bantha that I got from Chris Cron, he realizes that those legs were far too wobbly; they should not have been like that, and the overall product. If you're disappointed in that, he wants to make that right too.
Okay. All right. I'll give this some thought and I'll be back in touch with you today or tomorrow and I'll give you my recommendations. How about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, well, hey, man, it's I enjoy talking to you, even if it's stuff like this, because it's kind of the reason why I approached you from the very beginning, because I still hold you at the top of the ladder of everybody in your space, and that's not gonna change, and that's why I was extra hopeful that that we could talk and come up with something that really kind of bridges this gap here.
Like I said, I'm the what do you call it? The lines of communication are always open, and I'm not going to tell you, no, I'm not going to talk to you. So like I said, let me think about this, because I just need to think about all the information I've been given, and then I will be back in touch with you within the next 12 to 24 hours and give you my recommendations for what I think might be effective. So,
okay, cool.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, man. Good stuff.
Yep. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
Bye.